The Game Day 1 football preview show is brought to you by Veolia and White Plains Hospital. Our final preview of the Section 1 playoffs is our Class B preview. Thought it was going to be Class C, right? Because of the fact that you look at the top and you have Westlake and Bronxville. They played for the Class C championship. Now they're at the top of the Class B standings. It makes the Class B playoffs this year very interesting, and I still believe, as much as they're both undefeated and as good as Westlake and Bronxville have been, I think this is very wide open. I would not be shocked by anybody winning this Section 1 championship. The show today is brought to you by Veolia and our friends at White Plains Hospital. I want to thank them for their work all season long to help support Game Day 1, to help support high school athletics and high school football. We appreciate partnering with both of those entities. Let's first look at the bracket. It's in Class B on Game Day 1. And at the top is Westlake. Nobody saw that coming. Bronxville, we knew how good Bronxville was last year in Class C, winning. They brought all this talent back. But here to do what they've done, and they are, I think you have to say they're the favorite going into the postseason in Class B. Don't rule out Pearl River, Ardsley, Byram Hills. Pleasantville's obviously right there as well. The rematch of Pleasantville-Byram Hills. We'll get into those previews throughout the course of this week on Thursday with my Game Day 1 picks for Week 8 for the playoffs. Let's start with our regular season tie-up here and look back on the best of the regular season with our MV3s. Those are our three best players from Section 1 in Class B this season. And number one goes to number one, Tyler Mariscat of Byram Hills. He is the number one game-changing back player all around, all three facets of the game for Byram Hills. We've seen it all season long, starting with the first game of the year against Putnam Valley. Ran for 2 touchdowns, fumble return for a touchdown. He's done on special teams as he did against Pleasantville, their first-round opponent, winning that game with a punt return touchdown in the final 2 minutes of the fourth quarter. A game he caught 2 touchdowns. He has been so good, and he has meant as much to his team as any player in Class B. I think you take Tyler Mariscat of Byram Hills, and they're in huge trouble. And any other player off their team in Class B, I don't think you see as much of a drop as you would with Byram Hills. Now let's go. Our next MV3, our second guy, is going to come from the offensive and defensive line. That is Matthew McSherry at Bronxville. Maybe the best two-way lineman and definitely one of the best two-way prospects in Section 1. But the Bronxville offensive and defensive lineman has been awesome all season long. They've run behind him a lot, but they've really run behind this entire offensive line. But when you look at McSherry and the way he can change a game, he needs to be constantly attended to defensively. And he is just an exceptional talent for an undefeated Bronxville team. Our next MV3, I like Braden Linzega. It was really hard to pick somebody on Westlake, but I think Linzega at quarterback, the way he was naturally a running back, he takes over the quarterback spot to fill a void, and he's just led them to an undefeated season. I think when you look at what Braden has done, just a special all-around talent, week in, week out. They spread the football around in this Westlake offense. Obviously, John Castellano teams are always that way, but Brady makes a lot of the big plays, and he has helped keep things afloat. In a team where, again, they didn't, the quarterback spot was sort of up for grabs, and he is, he wears that number, doesn't wear a jersey in the 20s, and he looks like a running back there. He just throws the ball. I think he's a very underrated passer as well, and he has Westlake as the number one seed in the Class B playoffs. Our name to watch. This is not like an unknown player, but Louis Sadow is getting healthier, and he's carried this Pleasantville team. And I think when you look at the pedigree of this Pleasantville squad, and they went to state championship game twice. Last year they played for a section championship. They beat Rye in the regular season. I think Sadow, he's been there the entire way, and when the playoffs come, they're going to need him. They're going to rely on him. And he's still on the year, despite the injury that he injured himself against Bronxville in the first game of the year. He still leads the team with 76 tackles, or among the team leaders with 76 tackles. Sadow, a two-way standout for this Pleasantville team. And if they're going to go, and I don't want to say an upset, they're the 4 seed, they're hosting Byram Hills, but if they're going to be Byram Hills, they need a big game out of Sadow. Our Game Day Guardians for Class B for the regular season, obviously we talked about McSherry and this Bronxville line, but to me, Westlake's line, the way that they have performed this season week in, week out, has elevated them from being a team that can compete in Class B to a team that can win in Class B. And they absolutely can with this group. And I think the offensive defensive line, really the offensive front for Westlake, they run the football so well. They're a very disciplined team, not a lot of penalties. They are just really, really good up front. So our Game Day Guardians goes to Westlake. Our Class B Coach of the Year, Listen, I know I gave one of his players one of my MV3s, but Simon Burke at Byram Hills, I don't think we expected Byram Hills to bounce back the way they did last year. It took a lot of lumps last year, graduated some good talent. Obviously, Tyler Mariscott returning was a huge thing, but they have done an exceptional job, and Simon Burke and his staff, of leaning on Mariscott, but not overusing him. He is fresh going into the playoffs, and they have a real weapon in him. And I think Simon Burke and his group, obviously, they've dealt with injuries at the quarterback position. To win the last 2 games, they were on the bottom. They were on the outside of the postseason looking in. They needed to win the last 2 games. They go on the road, and they beat Pleasantville. Then they come in at home, and they beat Nanuet this week. You got to give him Coach of the Year for what he's done, especially for the last 2 weeks. My championship pick. It's a tough one. They didn't play in the regular season, Bronxville and Westlake, so you can't just automatically say whoever won that. I think when it all boils down to a fourth quarter of a close game, I like Bronxville. I think Bronxville goes and they beat Westlake for the championship. A tight game, a real throwback ground and pound game. They have a little bit the speed of this Bronxville defense. We haven't needed to see it so much because they've just been so dominant. But when they've needed to make big plays on defense, like they did against Ardsley, they did it. And I think they're going to do it against Westlake, and they're going to win this Section 1 championship for the second year in a row. They win in Class C, they win in Class B. And then if they get to the Class B state playoffs, I think anything can happen. They could easily be a team that goes to the Dome, as Class B has represented from Section 1 the last few seasons. Those are our Game Day 1 Class B previews, picks, MV3s. Coach, GameDay Guardians, we appreciate you watching. We'll enjoy the postseason, and we'll be back on Monday to recap it all.